Welcome to another figure week, hard surface week, organic week.
Hey everyone, my name is Ahmed Aldouri. I'm a concept artist and former instructor at Art Center College of Design, Brainstorm, CCS, CGMA, and various other places. And I would like to introduce to you this digital painting course that I've created. But before we get into anything, I just want to thank you for the support you've all given me this whole time. And with the support of so many of you, I've been able to put together everything I know about painting into this digital painting course. You want to become a pro illustrator, concept artist, or even just a hobbyist, but you don't have a clear map to get there. And that's where I come in. I spent the last 6 months compiling everything I know from my 20 years of art practice, and I've turned it all into a map. Starting with foundations such as rendering shapes, color theory, painting basic subjects, understanding brushwork, brush economy, all that fun stuff, deconstructing the skull, drawing it from every angle, all the way to master studies, stylized painting, and you'll find yourself at the end of the course doing a concept art project based on everything that we learn in the first 14 lessons. So how does it work? Well, you sign up, you watch the lectures, do the assignments, post them to the community page if you want, and treat it as a self-study, except for those of you who have signed up for the weekly meeting, where I personally critique your work in a virtual classroom setting. I believe learning by repetition is super important. That's what I've sort of presented a lot in this course, and the assignments are tailored for that, as adapted from my time teaching at Art Center. And each of these lessons have step-by-step explanations in real time. If you've ever seen my videos, you know exactly how I teach. And this course is intended to be a substitute for a college level course, but you don't have to pay the $4,000 or $5,000 per class, racking up maybe $200K in debt. With my custom design course, you'd be paying a fraction of that. And of course, I also have payment plan options if you don't want to pay for the whole thing at once. Thank you for watching this, and I'll see you soon.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Digital Artcast. Thanks for joining me again on the podcast here on either YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening or watching from. I hope that whatever you're doing right now in the world, you're staying safe, and I hope you guys are enjoying being creative on any projects that you have ongoing. And just thanks again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this episode. Speaking about this episode, another amazing guest we've got on the podcast. As always, I try to source some of the best people I can to find to talk about games, creativity, movies, everything in between. And today we are joined by Mr. Vincent Ménier. Hey Vincent, how you doing?
Hey man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. We've tried to organize this for a bit, try to find days that you're free and times and stuff. But because you're across in Singapore right now, so yeah, it's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, so we have 7 hours time difference. And we both live busy lives, which means that sometimes it feels like even more time difference, right? With the sleep schedules and the work and everything.
Yeah.
We made it. I'm glad.
Yes, indeed. I don't think the way the world's set up, it's really helping. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, with the way the outlook's going right now, that COVID and international travel and stuff is all starting to really kind of go back to a bit of normality. So I don't know what it's like in Singapore right enough, because I did know in the news the other day that parts of China were also shutting as well because there was some new variant or there was a kind of outbreak again. Are you guys okay in Singapore?
No, Singapore is pretty great right now. Like thing. So I've only been here for a bit less than a year, so I'm finding
Right.
out what it's like. But
Mhm.
the way they are is they tend to be very strict and have very just strict constraints. But then they modulate those constraints very fast, very fast. So I think less than 2 months ago, we were even still wearing masks outside and
Right.
like contact tracing apps everywhere, etc., etc., and like small groups only. And now we can remove masks outside. They remove the contact tracing. It's restaurants don't have to check for vaccination anymore. So
Mhm.
it's a lot more livable. At least for me, it's like I'm not someone that actually enjoys the heat, but in Singapore, it's 32 degrees every day,
Oh, wow.
almost, and so it's pretty hot. But that means that wearing a mask outside, I find it pretty rough. Inside, I don't
Yeah.
mind, but outside is really rough. But now it's like I'm living again. It's like it's a pleasure to
Go outside
go
again.
on walks and whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's very livable. Like in Shanghai right now, they have it pretty rough. They have a pretty tight lockdown for I don't know how long it's been, maybe 6-7 weeks, something like this.
Right. Try and get back under control.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things I just want to get back to normal because I'm missing also just events because, all the first couple of years I was trying to basically network and get out there. I was going to every event I could, THU and industry workshops and loads of other things and playgrounds, everything in between. But I've not really been to an event since about 2019. We were just talking about that. I went to Lightbox in 2019, so that was the last thing I really went to before the restrictions really hit.
Yeah, I feel you there. I really miss events. Like I used to go to THU every year for a while, so maybe we were there at the same time, but just didn't meet.
Maybe, yeah. I was
Uh,
there in 2018. That was the last time I was there.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I was there in 2018. I
Yeah,
did a
so that
few
was the first
in
year.
Troya and a few in Malta, I think. So
2018 was the first year they went to Malta. I
okay,
remember
so
that
I
much.
was there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a lot bigger, I think, in terms of scale, right?
Yeah,
That one.
definitely. Yeah,
But
I'm actually quite
I
pleased
miss
with
it.
it.
I miss it a lot. I can't wait to go back. We used to do a thing with a couple of character art buddies of mine who live just all around the world. Is
Right.
every year at THU we rent a villa together and we go together, and we
Oh,
used to have
nice.
a fantastic time. And those folks are actually a big part of my support system in the art community. So
Of course.
like
Yeah.
we have like a super small Discord, just like 10 of us, where we share feedback in a very brutal ways. uh, but it's been awesome because we actually met at THU. I think it was like 6 years ago or something like this.
Yeah.
And at the time, everybody was like a student, a junior, or mid, or something like this. And now in the group, like half the group is a lead or a super senior on a AAA game or whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome seeing the growth of everyone. But we are kind of missing our yearly pilgrimage. So I hope sometime soon we can do it again.
Yeah, I was tempted this year because I knew they've moved back to Troya now, which I think obviously was the right move. I think Andre was saying that Malta just wasn't right for them, but I owe a lot to that year I went to THU. I met so many amazing people, and it was part of the reason that I got to be friends with Raf Grazzetti because he was there doing a talk, and I just kind of had to offer him, and we've been buddies ever since. And yeah, like it's a whole thing where you just meet these connections and you talk to a lot of people you don't even realize, how massive an artist they are or what project they're on. You're just talking to people like they're people, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, like I work for Riot, Blizzard, EA, whatever." You're like, "Oh shit," like it's
I
yeah,
think it's an event in that, in particular, it does a good job at breaking down the walls, of
yes,
fame and status and whatnot. And you could just be having a beer with someone and giving them feedback on something very seriously, like you're giving them advice, and then suddenly you realize, it's somebody who has 20 years more experience than you,
you're like,
but
"Oh
they
yeah,
were just being very humble and
oh,
everything.
I hope that's
It,
yeah,
it
yeah,
makes
no,
the fun
it's
of it, right? It makes the
yeah,
fun of
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So
No, it's it used to be a thing where people thought it was almost being rude for us to start a conversation. We're like, "Oh, where do you work?" Because I was always trying to like gauge, like, am I talking to a 10-year vet? Like, how many years in the industry have you been? But yeah, I think it's also good when you go to these events and you try to not think about like the veteran status of the senior stuff. Like, I think it's good to be able to go to these places and just be normal people and have fun and be part of the tribe and go to the talks and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I
Oh,
do my teach.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's been my favorite event to go to every year, and I'm really looking forward to go back. And if I ever come back to London, I hope industry workshops make a comeback as well, because
Oh
that was
man,
super fun. I was able to go only once, but I really enjoyed it. So
yeah, I went. That was my first event, 2016. Met a bunch of people there really early on. Like I said, I was saying earlier, like all of the CD Projekt guys I met there early on, and guys with CCP and some freelancers like Titus Lunter and stuff. And yeah, and then 2017 again. I think I went again there. 2018 was the last one. I think in the 5th year. Also, I've got actually. There's a. I don't know if you can't see it because it's also next to me, but there's a big one of the posters I got from the 5-year one, and I got everybody to sign it at the event. So I've got loads of signatures from loads of really awesome artists, all like on the poster, and I've got it on my wall. So, but yeah, I love THU and workshops are two of my favourites, and playgrounds also. And I was speaking to, because we just did an interview with Marek Madje from CD Projekt, and we were talking about Wonderland because I wanted really that to come back again. That was a really good event, but he was saying he's not really involved in it anymore, but he thinks at one point once COVID kind of calms down, they might talk about bringing it back. So.
Yeah, I mean, those events are always a great reason to travel for the event, but then stay a bit before, after, to visit. It's always nice. But, I think the trend is good right now. So hopefully we're going to be able to see more of them. And we get to, gather more as a community, which I think is very important.
Yes, 100%. Yes. So we're talking to you today about your career. And for people who don't know, could you give just a quick intro into who you are and what you do currently?
Sure. So I'm a character artist originally from France. I've been working in and out of the game industry for about 9 years and a half now. I can't wait to say 10 years. It's going to sound good. And currently I'm based in Singapore, and I'm a senior lead character artist at Riot Games. Though I always have to say it, I'm here representing myself, not the company.
Yes, not the company. Yes, of course. Yes.
So if I say something stupid, please don't go and and say, "All right,
I'll try and go back in there."
But I'll try to keep my my French tongue clean tonight.
Yeah.
But yeah, currently we live in Southeast Asia, and it's I've been there for a bit less than a year now in Singapore, and close to 2 years at Riot. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So I mean, like we were talking about, with the stuff you do for Riot, it's mostly R&D. So a lot of the stuff is obviously NDA and stuff that you're working on that's not been announced yet. But obviously you've had a career that spans way back. Then you do 3D character art. That's your kind of main staple. Is that something you studied for originally? Did you go to school to study 3D character art? Was that something you kind of started with?
Got it. So I kind of stumbled into it by accident. Because no, I mean, really, I was never an artist. I'm not. I think I was always captivated by things that were beautiful. So when I played games, like graphics were important for me, or like visuals, things like that. But I was not like one of those kids who drew all the time, or started Blender at 14. Nowadays, like you have kids like by age 16 they're mad good.
Yeah.
So I was definitely not one of those. I actually initially thought I would go to business school because my dad is a CFO, and I was like, I kind of enjoy when he talks about it, and I felt that in me, and so I was like, I'm gonna do that. And so I started studying in a prep school for business school. Essentially, that's the way the format is in France. And I had a very sharp reaction to that. It's like, oh, this is not my people. This is not for me. It was really strong. And,
good. Oh well, at least you knew. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's one of the first times where I was like, okay, like this is really. It's not like, oh, I should make an effort and push a bit more and it's gonna be fine. It was like, no, this is wrong. This is not the right path. And so I went to my parents. I was like, I think this is not working out. And like they kind of know, like they kind of knew that I wasn't making something up, and I will be eternally grateful to them for actually supporting me in that moment, because I know a lot of parents would have been like, well, actually you started this and you're gonna do it. So they were good listeners at that moment. So I'm very thankful. And so I just started scrambling, like, the year is started. How do I not lose a year? How do I go to some school,
Right, and do something.
And
Yeah.
so I had applied to engineering school to become a programmer because that sounded interesting. I had applied to VFX school, to do a VFX for movies. And the engineering school said it's too late, you can't register anymore.
Okay.
And the VFX school, like the cinema school in France, they said, it's too late, but their too late sounded a bit flimsy. So I started calling them way more, and I was like, is it really too late? Like really, really too late? And they were like, okay, come on Friday at 4 p.m. and let's chat. And so I had an interview and a test, and 5 days later, I did my first day of school in VFX, and so that's where I started learning, 3D modeling, but also cinema in general. I think one of the things that this school did really well is teach art fundamentals and movie fundamentals. Right. So I had a lot of courses about like screenwriting and movie direction and things like that.
Oh, okay, right. So the full kind of pipeline.
So a lot less technical, right? A lot less like, you're gonna do 3D, right? But I think like 10 years later, like these are the one courses that stay with me and that were the most useful because I think they were the foundation of. I guess they were my first art fundamentals in a way. So I'm actually quite grateful for this. But yeah, that's how I started essentially.
Cool. And then was that a thing where it was specifically 3D modeling that caught your eye more than anything else? I mean, was it more prop stuff, environment? Were you doing characters from the get-go?
I mean, so I was very uneducated from an art standpoint. And so very often, if you see like, what do humans relate to? Well, other humans. Okay, so characters, right? And then the modeling had this magical thing where it was not as technical as something like, like I don't know, like rendering, which is very technical, right? Like lots of numbers and physics and stuff like that, or animation where you have to play with curves and all those things. Modeling is very like what you see is what you get, but I was so the dumb person that I was, the dumb youngster, was able to wrap their head around modeling in a sense. And at the same time, I think there was something quite magical about the idea of manifesting something from nothing, right? You open the software, there's this empty grid, and then a box appeared, and now you can make an extrusion and things like that. So I guess it was just a very simple straight line from doing nothing to doing character modeling. At least the way I saw it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think I've always had this affinity where I've wanted to study 2D art and wanted to be in the concept art world. I made a video recently about how like I'm going to try and maybe push that in the next couple of years and maybe try and learn to do 2D because it's just something I've always had in the back burner. But I think sometimes I'm always trying to put a square peg in a round hole, if that makes sense, where, when I do anything in 3D, like 3D modeling, like anything within Maya or ZBrush or Unreal, it comes to me very naturally and I'm very good at it. Like I tend to be able to make something in 3D relatively easy, and I mean, it's not perfect or anything, but I can model pretty complex objects pretty quickly. And I think it's always one of these things that I've maybe fought the last couple of years, thinking that I need to be part of the cool kids, because concept artists are seen as like the cool kids, right? They're the guys who can do the cool, awesome, sketches and anatomy and all that. But then the character, I think I've heard a couple of people who've done the same thing where the 3D technical stuff wasn't as technical but more artistic, and it spoke to them more. And like you said, you weren't one of those kids who was drawn, all the time from a really young age. And because always there's a thing where people even talk about like to be a character artist now you have to be able to draw also. Like, do you feel like it's always just been the 3D stuff that spoke to you more?
So I mean, I took a bunch of drawing classes and whatnot, but I would say like I don't know that I would put it as a prerequisite. Like, I mean, if you draw, it's like whatever you do, it's never gonna hurt, right?
Of course, yeah.
Something more is never gonna hurt. It's just I think my mind had a certain ease wrapping around like 3D objects, right?
Yeah.
It's like I understand things when I could rotate them. Like that felt good to me. Whereas 2D was always a bit more complex for me, like in sense, like, getting the sense of depth on a 2D piece of paper was still very I don't know, like it's a wall that I didn't seem to be able to break. Nowadays it's a bit different, like it's like I've not conquered 3D like by any means.
Of course, yeah.
I'm I'm a decent, if at
Forever
best,
student.
character artist,
Yeah.
but I tried drawing again, like a little bit, because I have a feeling like there are some interesting things to pick up there. But I always
Of
feel
course.
like it's good to do something else than the thing that you usually do, and suddenly, because you're out of your comfort zone like more than usually this is where you are more likely to have breakthroughs to happen,
Yeah.
because you can't fall back on anything, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in 3D, I have all this scaffolding of ladders and things that mean that whatever I do, even if I struggle, I'll eventually fall back and manage to find my way to something good. I don't
Yeah.
have that scaffolding for 2D.
Or did he?
So
Yeah.
when I do it, it's like, oh, it feels very risky,
Yeah.
But if something good happens,
Mhm.
there's the opportunity for good things to happen that may not have happened in 3D because I had that comfort in 3D. So I
Right.
think
Yeah.
it's really good sometimes to change medium and to go look outside of, well, your own beaten path, in a sense, because you might not learn anything, but you might
Mhm.
learn something that you would never have learned following your usual routine. So
Makes total sense. Yeah. So you've done the school and you've learned your 3D path. How did you then translate that from school into your first job, and how did that work?
got it. That's been a bit of a process, actually.
Mhm.
Let me just put the aircon a bit better because it's getting
Sweating.
warm in here.
You take that jacket
Uh,
off.
so how did it go? I did 3 years of VFX,
Right.
and I think after that, like, I had some comfort in modeling, but I had a feeling that uh, unless I learned what I thought was drawing at the time, but actually learning to be creative is what I was really thinking at,
Mhm.
I would get pigeonholed as a technician. And you can be an extremely good and technician, and then you'll have a successful career and all that stuff. It's not how I saw myself. So I was
Right.
like, if I end up being a low level technician and that's my career, it's not going to be very nice, and it's probably not going to be very interesting long term. So I thought I needed to learn to be creative in a sense.
Mhm.
So I went to a traditional animation school where I learned 2D animation, actually. And I stayed 2 years there, and I was quite lucky that a good chunk of the teachers were Disney veterans,
Oh,
right?
cool.
So even though I still didn't get to become good at drawing, I kind of learned a bit, but mostly I learned to read a character design. Like, that was the biggest thing for me. Is like, as a modeler now, I was not just a photocopy machine. I could actually understand the character design, like what makes
Right.
it good, what makes it bad, what makes it translate in 3D well or not, and even
Mhm.
sometimes improve the design during the translation process. So that's what I learned there. And the school was 4 or 5 years, but I left after 2 years because my dad left to Canada to start a business there.
Mhm.
And at the time, there was the whole gold rush of, like, video games in Montreal, right? Like,
Right.
everybody just wanted to rush to Montreal because, oh my god, like, this is where the cool stuff is happening. Uh, and uh, and I asked my dad, hey, how about I come with you, And he was fine, and so we left, both of us, to Montreal. I stopped school right in the middle, and I had this weird naive idea that if I could open 3ds Max and extrude a couple of boxes, of course Ubisoft would offer me a job. Right?
Sounds
So
like a plan.
right. It sounded like a great plan, and I wish somebody told me it wasn't the 90s anymore. But
Oh,
it turns out that no, the level of entry had actually risen quite a bit, right?
yeah.
Especially since ZBrush came in, and now people had to learn anatomy and do beautiful high poly sculpts and all that stuff, right?
Of course.
Um, and so I went there. I didn't have a working visa. I was a junior with an extremely mediocre portfolio, like really subpar. And as I arrived, I do think Funcom closed, and there were like hundreds of people on the job market
All
looking
right.
for a job. So it was just the worst in terms of finding a job. And so I applied everywhere, and I think I wasn't even in the mindset that I was gonna abandon art, because I had the feeling like it was very clear that I was not good at this.
Right.
And so I wanted to be a game designer. I had more affinity with that, because it's more of like I don't know, a mental thing.
Right.
But then quickly people are like, well, there's no way we're going to hire you as a game designer. If
Mhm.
you work hard enough, we might hire you as a 3D artist. So like that was my new plan. I'm going to get in as a 3D artist and then become a game designer.
Mhm.
But quickly it was like, there's no way you're getting in as a 3D artist. You're just so far from the level, right?
Right.
And so I was like, I'm going to get in as QA and then become a 3D artist and then become a game designer. So it, I kept lowering and lowering my expectations,
Yeah,
and
I'm going to start delivering mail to the building, and then after that, I'm going to get in.
oh man, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it was my first Dark Souls game. It's like getting a
Oh,
job
yeah.
in the game industry.
As you walk to the building, the Dark Souls music started playing in the background. You're like,
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, and
yeah,
but it was wild. I was like, okay, well, how do I do this? And I had to learn to be hungry and to really want it. So I tried to find out where game developers would gather after work to have drinks, and if I could, like, hey, can I buy you a beer? And then I'll show you my work, and then you'll tell me it's crap, but at least you'll remember my name. And 2 years from now, when I leveled up, you might give me my chance. And so
yeah,
I think I spent my first 6 months in Montreal just going to events and to bars and harassing people while like learning 3D on the
yeah.
side. And eventually I met a guy who was like, "Hey, I can hire you as QA." And so like 2 weeks later, I started as QA tester on Dead Island Riptide. I think was my first title.
Okay, interesting.
And so for a few months, I was QA on a couple of games. I think I think I'm even credited in an Armored Core game which I've never played, just because they had to fill a seat in the credits.
All
So
right.
they put my name just because they sold that many seats, and so they had
Oh
to
my
just.
god.
So they're
Yeah.
like, "Who wants to be in Armored Core 5?" And I was like, "All right, I'll go." And so I'm in the credits of that game, I think, even though I never played it. I'm also
So was
not
that?
in the credits of other games I tested, but they
Oh
hadn't
yeah,
sold the seat, but they needed to do the testing, so I did the
yeah.
testing. But so that
So
was
was this?
how it all
So was
started. Yeah.
the company you worked for? Though, was that a games company themselves, or just someone who'd done QA for games?
No, it was like a QA company, so they would lend their services to others, but at the same time, they had the ambition of making their own games, because
Mm-hmm.
they realized, oh, look at that, there's a lot of poor souls like Vincent who
Mm-hmm.
have game dev training.
Mm-hmm.
We can make them 3D artists or programmers, but keep paying them as QA, right?
Right.
So after some time, I got my first 3D artist title, but with the junior QA paycheck.
QA. Oh god.
Uh,
Right. Okay.
so I remember my dad was a bit like, so you studied 5 years to be paid minimum wage, okay?
Yeah.
So,
Fantastic.
uh,
Job is,
so
yeah.
I was like, trust me, I'm not gonna, you
I have a
know,
plan. There's a
it's good.
plan.
I have a plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how it all started. It was rough, to be honest. I think in those companies you see a lot of turnaround,
Mm, of
and it's not the red carpets of the industry, right?
course.
And but it's a great place to learn. I think there's a lot of there's a lot to say about starting humbly, let's say.
Yeah. Of
uh,
course.
and maybe I needed that lesson in humility. Probably not. Maybe actually, like I definitely needed that lesson in humility when I was 23.
Yeah.
So I learned, like the hard way, and that was good. But I wouldn't have it any other way.
Of course. And then so you're doing the QA minimum wage 3D stuff, and was that character stuff, or was that props and modeling, or what
So
were you?
the game was obviously very small in scope, and so it was everything, right? So
Right.
I did some character work, some props work, some environments as well. I even did level design, and I don't know if I did some UI or something on that game.
Right.
It was so long ago.
A
I
one
think
man team
so.
here.
So to give a bit of perspective, I think the game was like a game for the Coast Guards of Quebec. Like a small mobile game for children to promote the Coast Guard of Quebec. Like
Oh,
that's
okay.
right. So like very very humble beginnings.
Yeah. It wasn't. It
But
wasn't. It wasn't like all these massive big AAA things. It was just like a small. Yeah. One.
exactly. Like this
Yeah.
is not the story of the rising star having their first job on Uncharted 4. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Something crazy. Yeah. I just
Uh,
wandered into Naughty Dog and they gave me a job. So yeah.
yeah. But it's
So,
good because it really makes you appreciate like the breadth of the industry,
of course.
because
Yeah.
very often when I meet students, they're like, I want to go to Blizzard. I'm like, okay, like that's a great goal, but they're
Mhm.
like, I want Blizzard to be my first job. I was like, that's like that's
A
a
lot.
bit tricky. So I think having that appreciation for everything that is out there, not only it's good, but also when you eventually do climb the ladder a bit and get to
Mhm.
more interesting positions, like you don't take them for granted. You really value the climb and what it got you essentially.
Yeah, we had this conversation not too long ago, talking about the whole argument when people talk. I mean, I've said it myself a couple of times that I'm definitely guilty of it, but on retrospect now, looking back, I can understand where I was wrong. Where I would complain that the bar of entry for games is too high, and that people can't leave school and get jobs anymore because there's too much competition, there's too much high standards. But what it really is people are more inclined now to start at smaller studios. So if you leave college or university, you wouldn't go and work for Blizzard or Riot, but you might go work for, I don't know, like a small indie team of 10 people who have their own studio down the road, or you might go for like a double A size game or something lower down. It's not a thing where it's beneath you, or like you're seen as a worse artist because of it. It's just that the bigger studios that have now grown, they only attract high end talent, and there's a reason for that because they make some of the best games in the world. And yeah, if you want to walk out of school into one of those situations, that's a big ask, because then you're talking like you need to walk out of school at a senior level, and that's, I think, almost impossible for most people. It's very rare I've ever seen people,
Oh no.
yeah,
I
do
mean,
that.
there's a case to be made. I think that we like in the AAA space, like maybe we don't do a good job enough at hiring juniors. And this
Mhm.
is really a generality because it's not the same for every studio. Like,
Of course.
and by the way, this is like purely my opinion, but like you will
Mhm.
see, for example, like Ubisoft, I think hires a lot more junior talent than some studios who are like very very senior focused.
Yes.
Um, Personally, I really like working with juniors
Mhm.
whenever I can. I think that's something that I enjoy
Mhm.
because I think there are things that junior brings to the table that seniors don't. You know, one of them is this feeling that everything can be done.
Yeah.
Because senior people, they're like, well, we can't do this because we've tried, right?
Right.
But sometimes it's like, we've tried in 1997. We haven't tried ever since, right? Whereas the junior is like, well, it's 2022 now, and I'm gonna try,
Yeah.
and they might succeed.
Let me just open
Uh,
Blender.
uh, well, yeah. No, but I think that optimism is something that is a very healthy thing to have in a team. It's just a matter of ratio, right?
Mm.
Because like there's this idea you're going to have one senior and three mids and then an army of
Mhm.
juniors.
Right.
Like I don't think like leaving juniors to themselves is the best way to go.
Of course.
However, if you have a couple of seniors and then a bit less mids and then a bit less
Mhm.
juniors, then it means those juniors get that attention and can be cared for.
Mhm.
And I think that's very, there's high value to that. But one of the funny thing is like top studios really struggle to find talent. It's so hard to. There's not as many seniors as there are senior jobs open,
Of
right?
course.
And I kind of think that it's because as an industry, we didn't do a good job at welcoming juniors and grooming them, into successful careers. And now we are paying the price because there's a drought of senior, right? Because we're making bigger games, more complicated games that require bigger teams very often. But where's the talent? It's not there, right? So personally, I would say like having a junior on every team, and I mean in every discipline, is probably a good thing to do. And one of the things I remember very fondly at CCP in London, where I used to work a couple of years ago, is we welcomed two junior artists, first as interns, but then we hired them as juniors. And I mean, personally, I think they had such a wonderful impact. It was an absolute pleasure working with them. They were hungry for knowledge. They were hungry to, they wanted to make their mark. But they were really good, right? They were like top tier juniors, right? But it was great to have them, right? And so I would definitely recommend people to sometimes reevaluate a little bit their perception of juniors, at least in the AAA space.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the idea when I talked to one of the guys, Timothy, who worked at Ubisoft. He was in the Berlin office, but he was saying how they have a structure where it's like they have one art director for the project. Under that art director, there's like maybe 4 leads. Under the 4 leads, every lead has 3 seniors, and every senior has 5 juniors. So it's like a thing where it scales down, that there's like this pyramid structure basically of like the teams are set in these small like triangles basically, so that everybody has someone to report to, and someone above them, someone below them. So the juniors go to the seniors to the leads to the art director. So I think that's one of the things sometimes AAAs can lack, is that structure, that rigid structure. But then Ubisoft, I think, are quite adept at building those types of studios. But they obviously, I think that's why obviously the juniors are quite welcomed as well, I think, because they have so many different variations of projects that they work on all the time. So
yeah, I mean, it's project specific and structure specific. I don't think there's like a golden recipe that every studio can apply. It really depends on what the needs are. So I don't think there's a good case to preach for like one specific structure and whatnot.
of course.
It's just I tend to be wary of the idea that juniors don't have a place in AAA, which
Right.
I sometimes get the feeling of. And but the other thing, which I think people don't know, is like they look at like job postings, right? And there's rarely a junior job posting, except at Ubisoft apparently. But there's rarely any job postings. And the thing is, a lot of those job postings they never make it to the public. It's like they get filled in internally, not necessarily by internal transfers, but it's like we know we're gonna have a headcount open. We know what kind of like person we want, like the level, etc. And very often someone knows someone, right? Someone's a teacher at a school, and they go like, hey, I know exactly who I want. I got 3
2 or
kids
3.
there.
Yeah.
They're amazing. One of them is definitely going to want to take this position, and boom. And then that role never gets made public, right? And so there's the idea that there are no jobs. Well, actually, there a great number of them are never made public, but those roles do get filled, right? So the situation, I guess, is probably a bit brighter than it looks on the outside.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I mean, it's one of these things, I think, where my strength has lied the last couple of years has just been networking and knowing people. And I think that's one of the things, like you said, like you talked about, like hunting people down in bars and like, trying to find people to talk to, and that eventually got you somewhere. It's one of these things, like, the opportunities I've been given just by going up and talking to people. Like even someone like Raf, because Raf's, like a huge icon in the industry and a huge character artist, but I just offered to buy the guy a beer and like talk to him, and out of that came an opportunity to work with him on his character course. And that was just by saying hello. There's so many opportunities that could be missed just by literally going and talking to someone and introducing yourself. I think as long as you go in with the perception that you're not just walking and talking to somebody because you want a job, right? You have to try and build almost a relationship, a friendship out of that, and then hopefully organically out of that something would come where they might eventually be like, oh, there's this job I saw and I thought you'd be quite good for it, and so do you want me to put you forward for it? Like
Absolutely. I mean, I was offered a few positions that way, and I referred a few juniors for positions that way. But I think, like it is this the value of networking is really it's underappreciated, I think. Like people think it's being fake. Oh, I'm gonna go be fake,
Yeah.
and
Oh, God, I
it's like,
fucking
no,
hate
actually
that.
don't be fake.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when you're hired eventually for a job, like a part of that is gonna be like your portfolio, right? You need to show the necessarily hard skills,
Mhm.
but a big part of that, and depending on who the hiring manager, maybe a bigger part of that is actually how you come off as a person, right? Uh, uh, I mean, personally, the way I hire for my team is
Mm.
I don't mind going a bit lower in skills,
Mhm.
like hard skills, if the
Right.
soft skills are higher, because I can train you to do art. Like that's okay. It's a lot harder to train you
Be a nice
uh,
person.
yeah, you can say that, but it's to be driven or
Mhm.
to be passionate about something or to
Mhm.
want to learn something, or in some cases not to be an asshole, but
Yeah, of course.
because you do meet those people as well. uh but yeah, because I think like people's personalities change over time, like that's for sure. But I do think that people's raw skills in terms of art change faster. uh, so if you see someone who has the right attitude, maybe they don't have the right portfolio, but they have the right attitude, you either hire them and then you speed up their growth, or you just keep an eye on them, and then 1 or 2 years later they might be just like amazing, but maybe by that time you probably lost them already and another company
No, they've
hired them.
waited somewhere else. Yeah, that
Because again,
happens.
the talent is rare nowadays, so sometimes
Yeah.
you have to squint a bit.
Mm.
But anyways, yeah, I do think people should network more, and um, I think yes, there's too many times where it took someone to open the door for me. Then there's still the interview process and all those things,
Oh,
and
of course,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and, and you don't get like a favorable treatment or whatnot. Like
Absolutely not.
you
Yeah.
don't get hired if you wouldn't have gotten hired,
Yes.
but the door has been opened for you, and that's very often the hardest part, I find.
100%. Yep, I wholeheartedly agree. Was that the case? I think then when because you were in Canada, right, and you were doing this job here, but then you talked about working at CCP London. Was that the next step, the next jump that you came across to London for? Was it?
Oh no, I had many jobs in between.
Oh yeah, wow! Like there's obviously a big gap, but yeah. So you done the mobile game for Fisherman, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
and then did you eventually get into a game studio in Canada? Was that one thing you eventually
actually, I
wanted to do?
never made it in Canada.
Right.
So what happened is I was really unhappy at that studio in
I
Canada,
can imagine.
because on the one hand the conditions were hard, and on the other hand I wasn't built mentally to be able to endure them. And I wasn't mature enough yet, and so I was quite depressed actually. Uh, and to the point where my girlfriend at the time, now wife, she said, well, you quit and I'll support you financially. Her parents and my parents also offered to support us financially, and you focus on your craft, and you put all your time in just raising that portfolio. Because it was really clear at the time. It was just the portfolio was the blocker all the time. I wasn't
Right.
good enough,
Yeah.
and so I started doing this, and still being active on forums and going to bars, and get rejected every 2 days by every single studio in Montreal. I don't know if there's a studio in Montreal who haven't received 5 applications from me, to be honest. Uh, so
I mean, at least you
yeah.
were trying. You were trying at least to apply constantly. I mean,
Oh yeah, and then and as my portfolio was improving, I think my skill set of being an applicant also leveled up. Right, I got better at writing cover letters, doing CVs and whatnot, because
yeah, yeah.
I tried everything I could. And but eventually, on a ZBrush forum, I saw a guy said, we're looking for someone who can sculpt statues for us, like and I saw you had a nice anatomy model there. Would you be interested? And I took an interview, and boom, next thing you know, I was flying back to Paris, and I was working in the collectibles industry back in Paris, so I never made it in Canada actually.
No, back to the motherland. That's cool. Yeah, they're doing. I mean, collectibles seems now even it's like, that's a big enough industry in itself. The collectible stuff like sideshow and things. I think even people, if you'd even just made it in the collectibles realm, it still would have been a success because it's such a huge thing to be on now.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean it's a really cool industry, I think, because there's a just like gaming, but maybe even more than gaming. I'm not sure. It would be interesting to ask people who work at a high level in both industries.
Right.
But I think there's like a strong connection with the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Like people go to events to see your statues and pre-order them and see like them unpainted and all that stuff. Like that. That's super exciting.
Is that something also that's exciting, as a character artist and a former guy who worked in collectibles, that 3D printing is now so accessible?
Oh, true. I mean, I think when I started in collectibles, so that was like 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Formlabs was rolling out their first printers, and they were pretty good. I think it was like oh my god, like the Form 1 and Form 2 were like pretty good.
Right.
But then you got all those affordable and very decent printers that came out, and I saw people made side business out of it and stuff like that, because originally, like early 2010s, like printing something was super expensive. And I mean, even today, like getting a high quality print that's ready for production is like it's not a cheap thing, right? But if you want to print something for yourself and a couple of buddies, it's like it's doable, right?
Yes.
And it's doable at home. Like you don't need to go to a factory or something.
No, yeah. There's so many 3D printers that come as just one set small unit you can put in your desk now. And one of my friends uses it to print Warhammer figures. Like the small.
That's cool. Yeah. That's
so
perfect
if they have
for that.
if they have a gap in the army or something, or you just want something on your shelf, you'll just print it and paint it and put it up. So it's a thing. But yeah, it's one of these things where I think that industry also is now exploding. And even the time I went to Lightbox to go to that event, Raf was showing off and selling a couple of the collectibles he made, and he did a Nova sculpt that he'd made and got it made into like a full figure that had like the joints, they were like magnets. You could basically just stick everything together or it could come off. And he also had his Yoshimitsu statue thing as well that he sold a bunch of. But yeah, that was all just through a local guy in LA who'd done all that for him, just kind of made a cast and a mold and then made them. But they were also magneted and put together. But yeah, it's like it's very accessible now to get into that whole thing. And even with collectibles back then, like, it seems like the level of stuff that's now getting made is far and above beyond what it was even 3 or 4 years ago.
For sure. I mean, one thing I'm glad about, to be honest, is just the idea that like 3D modeling can have so many more avenues than it used to have, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So like now you can work in games and films. You can work in medical stuff, like those collectibles as well, and I'm sure there's a couple I'm forgetting, but I find it really interesting. Yeah, you can work in fashion as well. I see now quite a few fashion brands are working with like Marvelous or Clo 3D and stuff like that to prototype early on. So that's pretty cool. At the time it was very like, you're gonna work in like movies or advertising, and it was like and
that was the only
now
thing.
it's so much more. Like, so that's
there's
awesome.
a talk I watched recently how just the skill set now is just so overlapped that, like, because everything is almost becoming photoreal everywhere you go. Like, there's demand where people in character artists can work, like you said, in games, movies, VFX, clothing, whatever. Like the skills are very transferable across all those different mediums.
And the demand is there. I mean, I think anyone who has a bit of a platform on the internet and who is like any good is quite often receiving requests, of various qualities, but but still, like
make some NFTs, bro.
God,
your inbox has been flooded, Vincent, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, all of us.
Yeah.
It's quite funny when talking with the buddies. Did you receive it? Yeah, I received it.
Yeah.
We all received the same email,
Yeah. Please somebody, God, please somebody. It's one of these things. I think 3D is on its rise, and it's always interesting with character art because again, I was speaking to Laura Gallagher, who runs a gang as well, and they were saying at the time that I think character art is perceived in both 2D and 3D to be one of the hardest jobs in the industry. Do you feel that way? I mean,
Hardest.
maybe not just in terms of raw skill, but maybe the fact that maybe there's so few character artist positions
Yeah,
globally.
so I think it goes back to what I was saying, like, my stupid student mind. I'm a human, I relate to human, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that anything which has to do with characters, there's just going to be more people wanting to do it. So in that sense, there's, heightened competition.
Of course.
However, like hard is like is complex to define. It's like if you're at the bottom of the mountain right now and you want to start a career in character art, yeah, like the ratio of effort to reward initially is like really not in your favor. It kind of sucks, You could put the same amount of work and you'd be a doctor, and it'd be like, oh yeah, all good. My God,
Better paid.
doctors are getting mad probably right now.
No, of course, no, yeah.
But to become a good artist, like just raw skills, it will take you a couple of years, and then to make actual art out of it, that may take you like up to a decade I mean, it
Yeah,
depends. You have people who grow at different speeds.
of course. There's also
But
a scale where, like, maybe within 2 years you could start doing commissions for, like, hobbyists or people who aren't game companies, or like, you might not get a games job in 2 years, but you might start working for a small firm close to where you live that wants some 3D models for an event or something. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't
yeah,
mean that you'll not be working for 10
yeah.
years. Yeah.
I mean, it really depends on the education path you follow, I think, because it's what I find complex is that there is so much information out there, right? There's never been as much as there is now, which on the one hand is wonderful, right? I can self-teach on YouTube, but at the same time, there's so much information that it's really hard to know where to start, and it's very easy to say take the wrong path, right? So one of the things I'm quite passionate about is I'm quite invested in the education system as a teacher and as a private mentor. Uh, and very often I find that when I work with students, like it's not because it's me, it can be another teacher who's any good, It's like in 1 year they'll grow more than in like sometimes 5 years with bad education practices.
Of
And it was
course.
never about their amount of work or how driven they were. It's just like they didn't know, and it's so hard to know, right? Until you meet the person who does know and is willing to share the knowledge. um,
100%.
and so, yeah, if you have the optimal education path, I guess in less than 3 years you could make money, like out of your nascent 3D skills, like in less than 3 years. But for the average person, it's probably going to take more, right? I mean, for me, I was telling you, it took me 5 years of studies, then it took me 6 months of intensive search in Montreal, and then boom, I was a minimum wage QA, right? So
Right, yeah.
like it wasn't a lot to show for close to 6 years of investment, if you
Yeah.
will. So I think it varies tremendously, but I'm glad to see places like like you mentioned Outgang. I'm actually a subscriber at Outgang. I think
Oh,
Laura's
nice.
content is amazing. She didn't ask me to say this, by the way.
No, no, no.
We
No, same, I
we
mean,
don't
I would
really
always
know each
recommend a lot
other,
of
but
stuff.
if
Yeah, of
there's a place I'd like to plug these days, it's this one, because I think like
course.
the ratio of quality of content to price is absolutely ridiculous. Uh,
Yeah.
so let's say you follow Outgang and maybe a few other places, and maybe you hire a private mentor for like 1 or 2 years. Man, if you have the dedication, because it requires doing this kind of alone at home,
Yeah.
you can make pretty big leaps in terms of your skill set. But then again, it's worth saying too, like not everybody can do that. Some people really benefit from having a structure and a group of friends and an in-person present, and then go get into an art school because that's the thing for you, right?
I think the biggest conversation I've had with people recently is the fact that there's a whole movement, I think, of seniors and people who have been veterans in the industry now starting to build schools, because traditional schools obviously can't keep up, haven't kept up for many, many years, and have no way of teaching people over the degree period that will prepare them in any way for jobs. So a lot of the guys now, like Laura and other people, are starting these new institutions that will specifically teach people in a class kind of structure or a way that will be regimented. I mean, the one I talk about every time on this podcast is Antonio Staparts, who works through ArtWad, and ArtWad, is one of the best programs. If you want to learn how to draw in any sense of the word, like that system is incredible. I mean, it gives you daily structure, weekly structure, monthly tasks, assignments every other day, things to draw. It's like going to a school, and it's like €15 a month. It's like, I couldn't tell you a place in the world that would be that cheap to learn.
Oh man, I
from.
just typed it on the site because I'm thinking maybe something I should have a look at. Like I was telling you, I'm trying to learn how to draw again and a bit better.
Yeah.
So that could be a good resource for me. Yeah.
Antonio's he recently done a video with Proco, Stan Prokopenko in America, about how to draw anything in 6 easy steps, and I think it had something like a couple of million views. It was like one of his most viewed videos, so he had to come back and do a course for Proco where he draws dragons. But Antonio basically, so ArtWad is it stands for Art Workout of the Day, and Antonio basically combined his love of CrossFit and art and merged the two together. Whereas
Okay.
CrossFit, you have like every day you have regimented, like, do 100 jumping jacks, 300 burpees, whatever it's going to be. So Antonio will say, right, it rotates. So there's 1 week it's hard surface, 1 week it's organic, and then the other week it's I can't remember the third week what it would be. It goes in rotation basically, and say in an organic week, he's like, right, we're going to draw goats this week. It's goats all week, right? So this week I want you to draw this many goats from life study, blah, blah, blah. And then he also does something that's like, do a 10 boxes in perspective, 100 circles. And he gives you your, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Here's everything you do this week. And then the next week, and then it rotates. The next week it's hard surface, right? We're going to draw cassette players or radios or something that's hard surface. And then he has, like, even last year he done something really amazing. He had like a summer boot camp where basically the guys he was training on ArtWad basically done a whole project over the summer, like a brief from a client, and they had like, it was like the Wild West, but it was mixed with fantasy, and then they had to draw characters and props and vehicles from the world and then submit them. So
Yeah, I've seen some of that stuff. I'm really intrigued now, so I know what I'm doing
yeah.
after this.
No, 100%. Antonio is a great teacher, and also works within industry. So he works with clients like Sony and other execs and people up at that level, and does concept design for them. But he was famous at the time because Antonio, I think, went from not basically being able to really draw properly to working in the industry in about 18 months, just under 2 years.
Oh wow, that's ridiculously fast.
Yeah, super dedicated. Spent several days, multiple days training, drawing, anatomy, structure, hard surface, perspective, just over and over and over and over again. And then when he started working, he basically started to do some YouTube videos where he was talking about doing like a kind of like zero to hero thing, where he was teaching people how to maybe like train like he did. And then more people were like, you just need to set a course or do like a huge tutorial thing. And then he just basically started the school. And it's been going for, I think, a little over 2 years now. He's in Belgium, so
Okay.
But yeah, he's quite well respected through a lot of the guys all over the industry know of Antonio's work and stuff he's done. So yeah, if you're looking to draw or do anything within 2D, he is the man to study under. So
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely willing to check it out. I think what's I was saying earlier, what's amazing is the variety of the resources nowadays. Because I don't think there's one way to learn, and there's ways that work for some people and not for others. So I think it's cool to experiment with various things, especially when you're young and you don't really know yourself yet so well, so you don't know what works for you. So it's good to try, because I know some people, like, they try to learn by themselves for a while and it doesn't work, and then they go to art school and suddenly they soar, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then you have other people who are in the like traditional education system for 10 years and they're nowhere. And then, they take an online class and work at home for a year, and suddenly, boom, they go from 0 to mid-level, close to senior. And you're like, oh my God, where did this person come from?
Jesus, like, here's my portfolio, and you're like, okay, well done. Yeah. But then this is the thing as well, because you talk about being a mentor. I mean, like, you're obviously going to agree with me, but I believe having a mentor in industry is one of the key essential parts of being an artist. I think, if you look back to even like the traditional artists, you're talking about the Da Vinci and stuff, they would sire mentees all the time. They would bring people in who would study under them, would wash their brushes for them, would, watch them draw and then try and copy and stuff. So I think it's something that a lot of guys say, like, oh, I've not got a lot of time for students, or like it's a waste of time because students aren't on my level and blah, blah, blah. But like, obviously you and I agree that mentors are very important.
I mean, I think like personally, I do see the value. I wish I had a live mentor actually, because I like this idea that someone can be your mentor and you've never met them, but you feel mentored by their thoughts, or their teachings which you read or whatever. I'm sure a lot of people nowadays would consider themselves mentors of Bruce Lee, for example, because he's written some really deep stuff,
Yeah,
that
of
can
course.
affect people, right? But I do think there's a great value in having a mentor. But then again, I don't think every senior artist out there should be a mentor. I think it's
Of course.
something that like doing and giving slash teaching, I think, are very different skills. Uh, I think you have people who are extremely good at what they do, but they're not so great at communicating
Teaching.
it. On the flip side, you have people who are quite, I don't want to say mediocre, but they're not
Excellent teachers.
stars, right? But they make stars. They're really, really good at teaching and
Mhm.
leveling people up. So that's good. That's good too. But again, it's like, should everybody find a mentor? I think it's like, find what works for you. Try it out, definitely.
Of course.
I've seen all sorts of things happen, but when you do have someone that you respect and you connect with, and like they give you some of their time, and then you give back by being dedicated to the work.
Of course.
Because nowadays I can't really ask art students to do my laundry, so I ask them to pay them. It's not like the Leonardo da Vinci days, like
Yeah.
you, please go change the tip of my Wacom pen.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess it's a bit more transactional in that way,
Yeah.
but it's, I don't know. I've seen I've seen kids like go from like okay-ish junior to super strong junior on landing a job in a year. You know, and just because the attitude was amazing, and to some of my mentees, by the end of the day, like by the end of our, not relationship, but like the mentorship itself, it was like, sure, I was getting paid for this, but I would do it even without getting paid, because like the relationship we built was so good. And
Yeah.
even sometime after, I still follow their career, we keep in touch, and it's just wonderful, like some of them just take off, and I don't know. I see some juniors I taught like a few years ago, and now I feel like they outclass me artistically. Like, it's ridiculous. But it's just wonderful following their progress, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it's. I think that's the one thing I find rewarding, and even the people who have, wouldn't say mentored. I mean, the people I'm maybe helping with their portfolio or helping at the time, it's like people who are like, either just starting uni or just about to leave, or like they've just got into 3D art and they don't know where to look. Like, that's the kind of people I'm talking to. But then I like, even that, when I've seen people like, level up or get a wee bit better at something and bring, like, oh, I done this week, and what do you think? I'm like, oh, it's really good and well done. And like, even with the podcast now, it's been going 5 years. Like, I've had emails from people, like a guy from Australia who a couple of years ago was like, I was really inspired by your story of like leaving your engineering job at 28 and going to like chase your dream. Like, so like, I've just turned 30. I'm going to do the same. I'm leaving my engineering job. I'm going back to art school. Like, dude, I was in tears. Like, it was incredible. Like, just people who were so inspired by what I'd done and wanted to do the same. So I think it's always a thing that people will always, I don't know if it's universal with artists, because I know some people who are senior artists or art directors who maybe don't see it the same way, but bulk of people I know, teaching is one of the things that really gives back to them and makes them feel more whole as an artist. Somebody always said to me that the job of senior artists is, when they get to the top, they will have to send the elevator back down.
Oh yeah,
Which,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I love that metaphor, and I think it's super true. But I don't know, it's just super gratifying, when you see someone just succeed. It's like, how can you not feel good about that? It's like,
yeah,
it's just great. uh, and like, it's very possible for some people. I mean, I don't count myself among them, but that you've reached the top of the industry, you've shipped 6 AAA games, and you feel good about your art, and maybe that's where you see your impact more now. Like,
yeah,
again, I'm nowhere near that level, but I'm sure some people feel that way. But it's wonderful because they end up being like super positive influences in the community, and I don't know. I think the impact they have sometimes is a lot greater than, I guess, institutions. I don't know if that's the right word,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. I think it's even when people come from a certain part of the world, like even like, I don't know what the scene like is in France with artists, but then if you're doing stuff, and people are realizing like, oh, he came from, the place I came from or speaks the same language, like it's always a positive thing when people are like, oh, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. And he's the inspiration because he came from France. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, in general, I think it's important to share stories
mhm,
because people relate to them, and that's what like often gives them the inspiration. And I've heard a few people say, "Well, I don't know, I don't want to really talk about my story because it's boring, or it's the same as someone else, or this or that."
of
And
course.
I think I don't remember who I heard saying that. Maybe that was Chris Doe, and he said
Mm,
like everything's been said. That's true, but
right.
no one has said it your way.
Of course.
And I was like, huh, it's like it sounds simple, but it's actually very, 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 very true. It's like, yeah, like you go and see those like popular movies. The story,
Mhm,
in many ways, it's always the same,
right.
but the good movies they tell it in a new way, right?
Of
So I
course.
think that's what you should aspire to, is to
Yeah.
find your own voice, not to
Your own version
shut
of
it
it.
down,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's like, when Matt Reeves was writing the script for the new Batman film years ago, people were saying, oh, Batman's been done to death, what can you bring to it that's new? But then, of course, the film, I mean, in my opinion, is one of the best Batman films I've ever watched in my life. I thought it was incredible. And, like, his voice in that was obviously very unique. And it's what, like you said, like, people think that the idea you have or the perspective you have in life or the journey you've took through art is very typical, or loads of people have done it before. What makes you different? Well, you're an individual, you're a unique person. That's what makes you different, and you will only do things the same as everybody else. You might have went to school, like, and done it that way, but you might have fallen off the back of a wagon and just went 3D because you had no other way of learning it. I always say the best thing about this podcast is I always pose the same question to somebody: how did you get into the industry? And everybody has a completely different answer for
For
that
sure,
question.
for sure. I mean, there's as many paths as there are people.
Yes.
To be honest. So, and
Yeah,
you see some
100%.
weird paths, like some weird paths.
Yeah. I was a circus clown for 10 years, and somebody one morning had to model something for us for the show, and I thought, oh, I might fall into this career. And yeah, it's like, who knows? But yeah,
I always think of Chris Costa was a banker until age 27.
oh, yeah. I remember
Like,
that. Yeah.
it's the best example of like
Yeah.
starting late and then just killing it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad because I started, I didn't graduate university till I was 32, 31. And, and then, yeah, I was always I felt like I was behind because I had so many people at the back of me who'd already had 10-year careers. So I felt like I was catching up. But then I met Yama Yobrev, and Yama obviously came into the industry very late as well in his late 30s. So, I'm like, if he can do it, surely anybody can. So, yeah,
I mean,
age is never a thing.
yeah, I think with the right approach and dedication, you can quote unquote catch up pretty
Yeah,
fast.
yeah.
You do see some people starting late, and in 3 years' time, they don't have a career; they have a name. It's like
Yeah,
people
yeah.
people recognize it, and I think Jama was a perfect
Yeah, Jama's like a perfect
example.
example of that. Yeah, yeah, he's like worked on Star Wars, worked on everything else. Like, yeah, he's done really well for himself. So,
Oh yeah, I mean, what a joy to see his stuff. I'm always excited when he posts.
yeah, especially with the new companies down now where he's making the 3D assets for like Unreal and stuff. Like, it's really incredible to see what he's doing with the industry and changing. That he's had this whole career in concept art, but now he's basically changing the way how people make it. It's like a whole other thing. It's crazy.
For
So.
sure, it's yeah, it's the next stage, right? There was photo bashing, and now there's like model bashing.
Now Unreal, yeah, it was even to a
with
point where
Unreal,
people,
with Unreal.
yeah, people were using Blender for so many years to do comps and stuff, but now Unreal is like so powerful that with Unreal 5, people are just making stuff in that and taking photos, and that's pretty much the way the industry is going. I think the real time stuff is definitely going to win over. So yeah,
And it's just the beginning. I feel
yes,
we are just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and it's
yep,
gonna get
yep.
crazy in the next decade. I
I
wouldn't be
could imagine.
surprised.
Yeah, definitely. Well, okay, right. I've taken up enough of your time, Vincent, but we'll end it there. But yeah. we'll definitely try and get you back on at one point. I'm sure we've got plenty more we could talk about, because I think you're one of these guys that I could probably talk at length with different subjects, and you'd also have a really good opinion with it. So yeah, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm always a sucker for these kind of conversations, because there's interesting things that come through. You told me about Artwood, so I'm gonna go check that out now.
Yeah. 100%. I honestly need to start taking a commission every time I recommend Artwood to somebody. I keep thinking that people are.
Where's my 5%?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, he's been a sponsor of the podcast for a while, Antonio. So we have a deal worked out where basically I get access to the course, and I advertise on my podcast as programs. So yeah, so it's been a good workout. But Antonio I would do it for free, honestly, because his courses is, it's sometimes criminal how little people know about the things he's doing and how it changes every day. And even now that he's formed his own concept studio, and he's actually taken students who have been long-time students since the course started, and they're now working under him as concept artists. It's crazy. As like the whole mentee thing we talked about, and growing people, like he basically, one of his so his first people he took on, Alex, like he was a student and started the program when Antonio launched it, and 3 years later is now working for him as a full-time concept artist. So crazy how that's kind of came full circle. But yeah, amazing.
Well, there you go. And I'm sure if you'd ask him, he'd say it's probably just the beginning as well, right? Probably.
Yeah, of course.
Big plans,
big plans for Artwood. It's just, like I said, it's only been a couple of years up and running. But yeah, I think he eventually says the end game is he wants to make a brick and mortar school in Belgium and have people come to the school.
There is good talent in Belgium. Like for such a small country, I think you see some good stuff, right?
Yeah, Bram Sells is out of Belgium as well, and he's a really great artist as well.
They do the Divinity series, and now Baldur's Gate 3 over there.
Oh, of course,
That's
great studio.
Stuff, right?
Baldur's Gate, love it.
And, the two interns we took at CCP, they were from a school in Belgium, and they were killer. Nice. So no, I do think there's an untapped talent pool, if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely. The small countries around Europe are definitely just hotspots. So yeah. Anyway, okay, right. Yeah. So if you guys are listening to this point, thanks for listening, of course, and I hope you enjoyed it. Also, you can check us out on Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Of course, if you want the video version, you can see our lovely faces. If you have any feedback or comments, any likes you want to leave for us, that'd be great. Help us promote. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks to Vincent, and we'll see you later. Bye, guys.
Good one, folks. See ya.